All right. Jeez. Another long checklist before I could go live. What is good, everybody? It is the Godfather of VR, the ageless one of the man, Lincoln Clay, and we are back with sort of a podcast, rant, what have you, talking about the situation with Gran Turismo 7. So, with Gran Turismo, I'd probably say over the past couple of months, I've been finding things that's been bothering me about the game. Several things, and I've tried to express I've tried to talk about some of those issues without exactly trashing the game. Um, but I think yesterday things just reached a fever pitch. Basically went into a rage yesterday. So where do I start? Um, Gran Turismo's penalty system, I think going all the way back, going at least for me, going back to Gran Turismo Sport has been a little bit of a concern. Um, I think, excuse me, on GT Sport, I didn't do the daily races that much, so I wasn't affected that much by the penalty system. And a big reason for that was because of the VR support on GT Sport. The VR only supported time trials and one-on-one versus AI. There was no online VR support, so unless it was in VR, I had no interest in racing. And so because of that, once I made the jump over to PC, I was pretty much done with GT Sport. So so I really didn't experience that much what was going on about the dirty racing. Um, Last year, I started slowly experiencing the dirty racing because Kowalski, what's up, Link? I was watching the Daily Race C from earlier. I'm glad you didn't retaliate, man. Um, I'm not gonna lie, Kowalski. Actually, I did. What happened was I was my intentions were to um, go into the pits, change tires, and then see if I can catch this guy and just outright beat him. And lo and behold, I happened to look in my mirror, and there he was. So when he got on the side of me, I did try to take him out, but he went off the track. But he was able to maintain control of his car, and he kept going. Whereas by the time that I tried to take him out, my tires were gone, so I had a hard time trying to keep the car under control. So I went into the pits, got soft tires, came out, and I was trying so hard to try to catch up that I ended up hitting the wall because I'll show you guys the clip. Um, at the time that the guy took me out, I was in first place, and he knocked me off the track. And I think by the time I got back on the track, there were 7 cars left, and I was in fifth place. Um, Speaking of which, they changed the daily race. That daily race, Daily Race C on Circuit de la Sarthe or the Le Mans 24 Hours, it was a 12-lap race. They reduced it to 12, and that's got some of the bigger YouTubers concerned about that. And I think the fact of the matter is, I think they reduced it to 8 laps because of the dirty racing. I think guys were getting knocked off the track, and they got knocked so far back, uh, they didn't see any point in finishing the race, kind of like what I did yesterday. Um, so when I spun out for the second time and hit the wall, out of a 12 lap race, I think I still had maybe 4 laps to go, and we're talking about 3.5 minutes a lap. So we're still talking about another 13, 14 minutes before the race was over. At that point, I just quit. And the thing about it was, I was so mad that I totally forgot that I meant to save the race. I meant to save a replay of the race, and I was going to take I was going to record the clip. I was going to post it on Twitter, and I was going to tag Polyphony Digital. I've done it before. I've tagged Polyphony Digital on Twitter and told them that their penalty system is dog shit. And my good friend Ham, he followed it up. He actually took the clip that made me mad because I had a race earlier. I'd say it was about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. I was in a race, a daily race at Watkins Glen, and a dirty racer pushed me across the pit line. Now, when it comes to GT7, you cannot, once you see that pit lane start to form, you have to make your mind up whether you're going in or not. Because if you go past when the white line starts to form the pit lane, if you go past that as if you're not going to go into the pits, and then you suddenly decide that you're going to go into the pits and you cross that line, you're going to get hit with a penalty. So when that guy pushed me across the line, that's what the game was thinking. The game was thinking that I originally was not going to go into the pits, and then I changed my mind, and then I crossed the line. So and the worst part about it was he pushed me across the line, across the pit line, and before I could come back out and get back on the track, the cinematics took over, and the cinematics showed me coming into the pits. I changed my tires, and then the cinematics showing me going back out. When I got back on the track, I was hit with a 3-second penalty for crossing the pit line, all because the guy pushed me across the line. That left me furious, and then I think I had another race where I think a guy pushed me off the track and I hit the wall, and I think I might have got hit. It was either a 3 or a 5-second penalty. It's just I'm at a fever pitch with this game, and you're gonna hear my rage. Let me play this clip for you guys real quick. So let me go to where we had display capture, and then let me close this. So we're coming into the chicanes, and even though the screen is shaky, at some point you will see the second place car catching up to me. Now, if you look right here, 1 out of 10, which means out of 10 cars, I'm in first place. So let's roll it. You see him right there coming into view. Right there, you see the mirror, he's right behind me. Because I keep checking my mirrors to see he's there. And when we get to this turn right here, this is where he took me out, coming up right here. Come on! God damn it, this fucking game, these dirty ass drivers. Okay, so let me see if I can get to the point where the guy rear-ended me. Let me see if I can find a point where I try to retaliate with this guy. If I don't find it, you guys, you know. So he. Oh, yeah, that's. So I think this is going to be it coming up right here. Another fucking penalty. Here he comes right here. I did try to take him out. You see him in my rear view mirror. All right. So, looking back at that, I think he knew that I was waiting to take him out. So, at the right time where he figured I was going to make my move, I think he hit the brakes just as I tried to take him out, and I missed him and hit the wall, and then he was able to drive past me. So he knew I was going to retaliate. And yesterday brought me to a point where I'm really mulling over not playing GT7 anymore. I really can't deal with the dirty racing. I was already not feeling too good about the game before I even went into that race. So yesterday when I was playing that GT7 in VR, it was like, you guys have heard me talk about the 120 hertz reprojection, how it makes things look really blurry. And yesterday it was more blurry than usual. And I think that was because I was driving a Group 1 car, which is a lot faster than the GT3 cars that I normally drive. Therefore, it made things even more blurry. And the 120 hertz reprojection on the PlayStation VR 2 has made me change the way I would recommend this headset, but that is a story for another day. I want to stay on topic, but yeah, just know that if you were to come to me and ask me if I would recommend PSVR 2, you would get a totally different story from me versus when the headset first came out. So I've been wanting to talk about that, but it's been a really hard decision whether to talk about that or not, because I felt like there's no way that I could speak about the headset without it sounding negative. But at this point, one thing I definitely want to be is transparent. But coming back to that situation, I think the horrific penalty system on GT7 is what causes this kind of stuff. The penalty system on GT7 is ridiculous, so much to the point where I have been knocked off the track and been hit with penalties. You guys heard me say a little bit ago, I got pushed across the pit line and got hit with a 3-second penalty. And I think that encourages the drivers, the dirty driving. I think that, along with no damage, encourages the dirty racing, because in the case of GT7, this game is not about who turns in the fastest lap. It's about who's the lone survivor, as I said yesterday on the stream. Because guys come into this race with the intentions of knocking you off the track. And the physics of GT7 is as such where you can zero in on another car and knock them off the track and nothing happens to your car physically or penalty wise. Whereas a game like Assetto Corsa Competizione, if you accidentally touch a car, you could spin them out and nothing could happen to your car physically. You could still press on. But with Assetto Corsa Competizione, if you zero in on a car with the intentions of taking them out, you will knock them off the track, but you will go off the track yourself, and you could ultimately destroy your own car by trying to take them out. That is not the case with GT7. I've been meaning to ask, why no iRacing? The online racing, from my experience, is great. I'm not a fan of subscriptions. I just don't like paying this. I think it's kind of ridiculous to pay a monthly subscription and then still have to buy all your stuff. You still have to buy tracks and cars, and I had, my friend JD Max asked me to give it a try, and I had bought a 1 year membership on sale, and in addition to that 1 year membership, they kind of, they give you the bullshit tracks, but if you want the real popular tracks, you have to buy them, and it's not cheap either. I mean, one car can cost $15. One track can cost $15. Whereas a game like ACC, an entire pack might only cost you $10 or $15, where you might get a track and 3 cars. And so, in addition to that, I'm not a big fan of the physics of iRacing. I'm not a fan of the audio. The cars seem bouncy. And the cars sound like wind-up toys. So I just don't jive with iRacing. And so one day I went to boot up iRacing. The one thing I will give iRacing credit for is because it's an older game with older graphics, it ran good, and it looked good in VR too. So I mean, those are the pluses that I can give it. But one day I went to boot the game up, and it wouldn't boot up. And what ended up happening was my 1 year membership had ran out. So it locked me out of the game. And I just said, fine, I'll eat it. Because I think I probably spent maybe $70 buying several cars and tracks on iRacing. So that's, I just have to take the loss. But I don't see myself going back to iRacing. I hear iRacing's penalty system is supposed to be as such that it discourages dirty racing, but I've seen some people complain about the dirty racing on iRacing. I think I even seen Basic Ollie complain about it. So coming back to Gran Turismo, I'm not going to be on here long because I don't want to draw this out and make this last an hour trying to find things to say just to fill shit in. In a perfect world, Polyphony Digital should totally overhaul that penalty system, but I think the core aspect of the penalty system is baked into the game, so they can't change it, in my opinion. I think the only way they'd be able to give the penalty system an overhaul is they would have to completely tear the game down and then rebuild it. That was something that I didn't understand until the Onward developers finally came forth and finally became transparent, because I don't know how familiar you guys are with VR first-person shooters, but there's a VR first-person shooter called Onward, which was one of my favorite games, and it was one of the better-looking games in VR as far as first-person shooters goes. Well, the game was coming to the Quest, and it was going to be cross-play with PC, and I was like, yeah, that's beautiful, because that's going to increase the player base. Well, the day that the crossplay went live and I jumped on the PC, the graphics were downgraded. It was basically, I was playing the Quest version on PC, and it left everybody livid. And I did a rant stream telling them to fix their shit. And so then they finally released a statement saying that it was necessary to downgrade the graphics, because they basically said they literally had to tear the game down to make the crossplay work. They had to tear the game down and then build it back up. So they had promised that over the next couple of months, as they continue to build the game back up, they said the PC graphics will not only get back to where they were, they will get better. They said, but in the meantime, if you want to go back to the previous version, here's a rollback update in order for you to go back to the previous version. And I did that, and it was empty. So I quit playing Onward until they finally brought those PC assets, back to where they were. So, and then the developer of Thrill of the Fight, a boxing game in VR, people were requesting online for Thrill of the Fight. The developer said in order to make that work, he would have to tear the game down and then rebuild it. So it would just be easier for him to just start from scratch and start developing Thrill of the Fight 2. And so that being said, I finally understand that part now. So Polyphony Digital, assuming that penalty system is baked into the game, they would probably have to tear the game down, fix the penalty system, overhaul it, and then build it back up. I'd imagine something like that would probably take no less than a month, and the game would probably be offline while we wait for them to overhaul the penalty system. What I have seen is them adjust it. So one thing that I had noticed, the one change that I noticed about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the dirty racing is still there, but what I was noticing was when guys knocked me off the track, I wasn't getting hit with a penalty. And that was the thing that like made the penalty system absolutely horrible, is you get knocked off the track and you're the one that gets hit with a penalty. They punish you for being the victim. And so I think they adjusted the penalty system so people who get knocked off the track, won't get hit with a penalty anymore. It still dishes out ridiculous penalties, but I think that's one that they might have adjusted. As like I said, I don't think they'll be able to like totally get rid of that penalty system. And unfortunately, I don't think we might see a proper penalty system coming out of the Gran Turismo franchise until the next one comes along. And I don't think we're going to see another Gran Turismo game until PS6 comes along, because they're basically running this like a service game. So whatever bullshit we got to deal with GT7, that's what we're going to have to deal with this entire generation. No penalty system is perfect. Even ACC, if somebody bumps into you, both you and the person that bumped into you will get a safety rating penalty. Okay, I've accepted that. The problem with that is that it's not harsh enough. If you get into wrecks on ACC, you would probably have to get into about 4 wrecks before your safety rating get affected. And your safety rating might go from a 99 to a 97. Big whoop, So yeah, their penalty system, like the open lobbies, there's a decent amount of dirty racing that goes on in there. But as far as low fuel motorsports goes, because the game is regulated by live people, the dirty racing isn't as bad with the low fuel motorsports races. Like when people bump into you on a low fuel motorsports race, most likely they did not mean to take you out. What they were trying to do was stay close to you so they could set you up for an overtake. If you make a mistake or when you get on the straights, then they can try to slipstream you and get past you that way. And sometimes they hit the brakes a little bit late. They tap you. You go off the tracks. The ones where the guys who do it and it was truly an accident, a lot of them will stop and give you the position back before they proceed. But you do have a couple of dirty dudes that will they'll tap you off the track, and they'll send you a message saying they're sorry because because that basically softens you up and disarms you so you won't report them. But I have never gone into a sim racing game feeling like staying alive is my best chance of winning the race. Got nothing to do with my lap times. It's about not getting hit, and that's GT7. GT7, I think, is the only racing game that I know of where people come in feeling like their best chance to win is to knock other racers off the track. Um, I think the biggest deterrent would be simulated damage. Games like F123 and Automobile Lister 2, I think because of their collision model, their damage model, that would be your best chance to get into a game that has where the racing's not as dirty. Now, in the case of F123, if the damage is not turned on, it's going to be bumper cars. And in all fairness, even with GT7, in all fairness, there's a lot of people in there that's playing this game that's using controllers and they don't know, and they're just not good. They don't know how to race because they're usually noobs. They're using a controller. So they don't know how to race. In the case of GT7, you have your safety ratings, E, D, C, B, A. And the E and the D drivers, you're going to see a lot of wrecks in those races because, again, a lot of them are using controllers and not using the wheel. But once you get to the C and the B drivers, the dirty people you come across, they know what they're doing because they know how to drive. So any dirty move that they make was calculated. So yesterday, case in point, the guy who took me out, he actually started the race out in the lead, and I overtook him, and he fell off. And when he caught up to me, I guess he had his mind made up that he wasn't going to fight it out for first place, and he was just going to move me out of the way. It was a calculated move. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to drive. So there's this belief that with Gran Turismo, that as you work your way up with the driver rating, you'll see less and less dirty driving. That is not the case, because once you, like, even at the top tier, at the A class, there are a couple of dirty racers who are world-renowned dirty racers. They make their name as being the most dirtiest people in Gran Turismo. There's one guy in particular named Kimi Vellicini. He is regarded as the dirtiest. He's the dirtiest racer on Gran Turismo, and he will take out anybody. Not anybody, everybody. He will try to take out as many people as he can. And this guy is an A-rated driver. I've seen him get into a few scrapes with Key, Rory Alexander, Kirith, and he had a dust up with Key 25 a couple of days ago. And the other thing I found out about Kimi Vellicini is he targets the YouTubers. Like people like the Key 25 and Rory Alexander, they have their name and they have YT at the end of their names, which stands for YouTubers. So Kimi Vellicini knows those guys are YouTubers, and he will go out of their way to take them out so he can be on the highlight reel. And so I removed the YT from my name so I don't put a bullseye on my back, because I felt like that was part of the reason why I was experiencing some of the dirty driving, is because I had YT next to my name, which means they knew I was a streamer. So I think some people were going out of their way to take me out. But yeah, just because you work your way up the ladder to a higher driver rating, that does not get rid of the dirty driving. What that means is the dirty racing that happens at the higher level is more calculated. These guys know how to drive. They know exactly what they're doing. So I said it before that I think the best deterrent for dirty racing would be simulated damage. If you hit a car and you run the risk of destroying your own car, you're less likely to be dirty. I was playing Automobile Lister 2 a few days ago, and I was racing against the AI, and I was closing in on the car so fast that I had to suddenly slam on the brakes. I slammed on the brakes. I seen smoke coming from the tires, and after that, my racing wheel was going thump, 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 and I was like, what? And I looked at the telemetries. It turns out that I burned a flat spot into the tire, so it was making the wheel, thump, 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 thump. I was like, holy shit. And then with Automobilista 2, you can hit another car, you can hit a wall, and you don't have to hit them that hard to cause permanent damage to your car and knock you out of the race, or at least force you to have to come into the pits to get your car repaired. If they had something like that in Gran Turismo, that would reduce a lot of the dirty racing if these guys knew that their cars would get destroyed if they try to take somebody else out. Now, Gran Turismo does have damage, but it's only temporary. If you hit a wall super hard, you'll see the bumper light up red. You might see the wheels and the engine light up red, but it's only for like 5 or 10 seconds. After that, your car returns to normal. That damage needs to be permanent. If people understand that they can do permanent damage to their car, they are less likely to race dirty. No penalty system is perfect because you're relying on an AI to detect everything, and it just can't do it. When it comes to enforcing penalties, there is no better penalty system than a human being, because they can review video and then assess if there's a penalty, and then decide if a penalty should be assessed. But like I said, who's going to have live stewards in their games and stuff? Now, Set a Corsa Competizione, when they have a really big event, like I think like the 24 Hours of Spa that they just did this past weekend, I think that does have live stewards watching the race and handing out penalties, because I think the event is endorsed by the SRO or the SRO, because they have the SRO license. So yeah, that would deter a lot of the dirty racing if you added simulated damage. That being said, that is what I think GT7 should do. They have 3 daily races A, B, and C. I think they should add a daily race D that has simulated damage. And that way you go into one of those races and everybody has to be careful if they do not want to wreck their cars. And that right there, in my opinion, would eliminate a lot of the dirty racing. The risk of destroying your car and getting knocked out of the race would be the biggest deterrent from the dirty racing. But, I know what I'm saying is falling on deaf ears. I know Polyphony Digital knows they got a fucked up situation on their hands with this penalty system, because I'm not the only person that's complained about it. I know that they've received numerous complaints through Twitter and other platforms, and they normally don't respond, but I guess they responded to a complaint recently and said they were working on it, but I know it wasn't the penalty system. But again, unfortunately, unfortunately, because of me believing that the penalty system is baked into the game, I do not think it will be resolved until the next Gran Turismo comes out, Gran Turismo 8, whatever they decide to call it. And I don't think we're going to see another Gran Turismo game this generation. So what we got is what we have to deal with. So now, after what happened yesterday, like I said, I got to take a few days to think about it, because I've got 3 choices to make. One choice is I quit the game altogether, and that is something I'm strongly considering. The other option is I just continue to ignore it and keep playing, knowing that people are going to keep knocking me off the track. I mean, I'm at a point now where I get into Gran Turismo, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to finish a race, because I don't know who's going to take me out. Every time I see a car in the mirror, I don't know whether to hold my line or get ready to take evasive action, assuming that this guy is going to knock me off the road. I can't race like that, and you're not going to turn in good lap times if you can't stay on your racing line because you're worried about somebody taking you out. The third option is I can fight fire with fire. I can race dirty like these guys too, but I would take no thrill in winning a race because I knocked a bunch of people off the track. I want to be the fastest and most consistent guy on the track. And since you will not have that with GT7, simply ignoring it, I'm on. That's pretty much. I'm on. I'm almost eliminating that option. So it's almost like I got two options: either quit the game or start retaliating. Um, and if you were to put a gun in my head right now and say you got a choice, what's it going to be? I would tell you that I'll quit the game. But I know how I am. I would tell you right now that I'll quit the game. And basically, what would happen is I might play the game off YouTube. I'll come back and play the game. And the first time somebody bumps me off the track, I'll instantly turn the game off. My driver rating has slipped because the last 3 races that I've been involved in, somebody took me out and knocked me off the track. So now I've gone from a B to a C rating. And it probably didn't help that I quit yesterday. That's going to affect my rating even more. So a couple of more bad races, I might find myself getting demoted to a D class. And if I find myself, and if I get knocked down far enough to be in the D class, that's almost a certainty that I won't play the game because I don't belong down there with them. Sorry. So that's about where we sit. Like I said, I know my solutions, my suggestions would never materialize because the amount of work it would take to fix the problem. So yeah, I'm still going to be streaming, like either tomorrow or Thursday. I still got a couple of more streams planned this week. I still got to get back together with Ham. We still got to get back onto our F123. And I still got to do an ACC stream. So, but before I get out of here, I will tell you this. If someone were to come to me and say, I want to play a racing sim on PS5, what do you recommend? Naturally, you're going to hear the depends. It depends on what you want. Do you want this? Do you want that? Yada, yada, yada. I would tell them, if you want to be a car collector, go ahead and go with GT7. But be warned that this is going to happen when you go into the online races. Be warned that they race dirty. If you come to me and say that I want to get a racing sim where I can have fun and there's not a lot of dirty racing, I would probably tell them to get F123. Because truth be told, a lot of shit happens on a set of Corsa Competizione on PS5 because a lot of the guys over there are using controllers. And ACC those cars are very hard to control, using one of these. So you are and then over on ACC on consoles, these guys that's using controllers, they have no sense of understanding brake markers and braking distances and stuff like that. So a lot of times they'll hit the brakes too late. They'll fly right off the track, and if you're in front of them, they're taking you out with them. So yeah, so if someone were to ask me what my recommendations are, I would probably tell them F123. Now, coming back to the PSVR thing, I'm going to give you guys, I don't know when I'm going to do it, But eventually, I'm going to give my reevaluation to PSVR 2. But I can tell you this right now. Relative to PSVR 2, if someone said on PSVR 2, I want a racing sim, I want to be able to race in VR on PlayStation, I would have no choice but to recommend GT7 to them because it is the only racing game in VR on PS5. If there were other options, I would recommend those games to them. If F123 was in VR on PS5, I would more than likely recommend that. So that's where it's at. If someone wants a racing sim that has the least amount of dirty racing in it, I would not recommend GT7 to them. So, with that, I think I can get ready to boogie on out of here. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Look at that. Some people live. Got some content to watch. You probably jump on Great Tantrum. GT7 is the only game. It's like they have Monopoly. No ACC. No, look, like, honestly, Tantrum, I've talked about this a number of times. Let's start with ACC. Hey, thanks, Dan Sock. But let me say this before I get out of here to answer Tantrum's question about GT7 being the only racing sim in VR. I simply think the other games, the PS5 does not have enough power to run those games in VR. One of them, the dev confirmed it. I told you guys this. I told you guys this before. There's one of the developers. His name is Aristolis for ACC. He was doing a stream one time, and I super chatted him, and I asked him, "Is ACC going to get VR support on PS5?" And his exact answer was, he said, "Too many resources. The console's not strong enough." When he said that, originally, I did not want to believe him, because I thought the technology that was going to go into PSVR 2 would be able to make the game run on PS5. Now I understand it does not have enough power. That's one of the reasons why the majority of the games on PS5 are running with this reprojection, because it does not, in my opinion, it does not have enough power to run a lot of these games natively. When it comes to sim racing, 90 degrees is the cutoff. That's the bottom. I've done enough sim racing to tell you that if a game drops below 90 frames per second, you're going to see it. You're going to see the little skittish and stuff. GT7 runs at 60 frames per second natively. The 120 frames reprojection is they're inserting 60 artificial frames in between the real frames, giving you 120 frames per second. And that causes the game to look blurry. It causes a ghost trail. If they ran GT7 at a native 60 frames per second, it would run like dog shit. Flat screen, 60 frames is great, but VR is a totally different animal. A lot of, when it comes to racing games in VR, it has to run at least 90 frames per second in order for it to run smoothly. And if you want it to run smoothly without blur, it has to run at a native 90 frames per second, not asynchronous space warp, not reprojection. I think they were told not to. If that's true, then why did they release that racing game on the Quest 2 looking like a potato? You think they care about graphics? Honestly, EA's getting a really bad rap for putting a bad looking racing game on Quest 2. I honestly think they did what they could with what they had because, you still have to keep in mind that that's a mobile chip that's a cell phone chip inside of the Quest. So I think it would be unreasonable to expect PC type graphics on the Quest. Everything else is there. It runs good. It sounds good. There's a lot of content there. There's a lot of cars to choose from, a lot of tracks to choose from. You have an entire campaign, but the graphics are awful. And I think they did what they could. I think they had to keep taking the resolution down and keep taking the assets down until they got it to a point where it ran good. I think they probably could have turned the graphics up a little bit, but I think it either would have ran like shit or it might even drain the battery even faster. But they did it. I see no excuse. Thus, I think they were told not to. GT7. Well, now, okay. I can give you that, Tantrum. I would not be surprised if Sony told the others not to. Because I think they have already manipulated some of the VR market. Brian Paul of PlayStation VR without parole. I think one of the games that he talked about was Among Us. Among Us is coming to the Quest, but I don't think it's coming to PSVR 2. He's trying to say that he believes that Oculus or Facebook Meta he think they paid the developers of Among Us to make it exclusive to the Quest. He says that Sony needs to do the same thing because they've got the money to fight fire with fire, pulling those kind of tactics. And they have. One of the games is Creed. You originally had Creed Rise to Glory. Well, on the PlayStation VR 2, you have Creed Rise to Glory Championship Edition. So what they have is, they have Creed Championship Edition on PSVR 2. They have Creed Championship Edition on Quest 2, but there is no Creed Championship Edition on PC. I think the reason why they did that, I think Sony paid Survios not to put Creed Championship Edition on PC so the PSVR 2 would have the best looking version. The regular Creed Rise of Glory, I looked at that game through my Quest Pro and my mind was blown how sharp that picture looked. There's no doubt, PSVR 2 comes up short against PC. Especially my 4090 with that Quest Pro. PSVR 2 is not even close. Therefore, any third-party game that comes out in VR, I'm buying it on PC. It's going to look better on my PC. And whatever frame rate I set it at, I can set it to run at that frame rate natively. Whereas on PSVR, in all likelihood, it's going to be run with 120 frames reprojection, which is going to make the game look blurry and not look very appealing. But so I can give you that, Tantrum, that maybe Sony told the others not to do it so they would have the only racing game in VR on PSVR 2. I can see that. But I do think that in the case of ACC, I really do think that the PS5 does not have enough power to run it. Because the game is very demanding on PC. The game doesn't look very good on a lot of PCs. And Marco Massaruto, who's the CEO over at Kunos, he did an interview with Traxion GG, and he admitted that the optimization for VR on PC is not very good for ACC. And he said a lot of that has to do with the Unreal Engine being very generic and lacking features. So if it doesn't look that good on PC, it's going to look even worse on PSVR 2. So I truly do believe that ACC is not going to get PSVR support because it does not have enough power. I've also seen other things on PSVR 2. I've also seen other compromises with PokerStars VR being one of them. I've seen assets taken out, like for instance, with PokerStars VR on the PSVR version, you have a neck and you have floating hands. On the PC and the Quest version, you have an entire upper body. You have arms, you have entire arms, you have an entire body. But yet you only have a neck, you only have a head and floating hands on the PSVR version. I also noticed it on the PC version. On some of the maps, there's NPCs like the saloon map. There's NPCs in there. You go into the saloon, there's a bartender sitting behind the bar. There's patrons inside the saloon. There's people sitting at a table. There's a room that's supposed to be a brothel at the top of the steps, and it's got a door with like a door with a window, and then the lights coming out of that window, and you see silhouettes of people moving across that window. That stuff's not there on the PSVR version. Those NPCs are not there. So I think that PokerStars VR is a very demanding game. It doesn't look like it, but it is. Reflective surfaces and stuff like that. It is a very demanding game. And I think in the case of PSVR 2, same thing like they did with GT7. I think they had to strip out some assets for the VR part of it, and it's running at the 120 frames reprojection, but you don't see it as much because PokerStars VR is not a moving game. People are just sitting there chatting and stuff like that, so you don't see the blur the way you do on GT7. Let's see here. Dan Socks, I wish devs just did their own marketing, their own PR. Having EA lend you money and provide subpar service needs to stop. There's a reason Rockstar and Bethesda don't talk to those fools. And Tantrum, you said, I understand PS5 might not be powerful enough, but it did not stop devs to release games on systems that were less powerful. Look at the Switch ports. That would be true, but we're talking about VR because VR games, especially hybrid games, games that you can play both flat screen and in VR, especially racing games, are very, very demanding. I dare say that when it comes to VR, the two most demanding games that you will play will be racing sims and flight sims. A game built from the ground up for VR, how demanding that game is to me depends on how big that world is, how detailed that world is, and how many characters are moving around in that world. Like Red Matter is a beautiful game, but there's nothing going on in that game. All you're doing is going from scene to scene and figuring out puzzles. You go into a room, a door doesn't open, so you got to walk around the room and find pieces to fix the control panel and then open the door and go into the next room. There's no action in Red Matter. So a game like that, is going to look beautiful on PSVR 2. It can handle it. But again, like Microsoft Flight Simulator is another prime example. On PC, even before it got VR support, when the 3090 was the most powerful GPU out there, the most that a lot of people that were running benchmarks on Microsoft Flight Simulator was getting about 45 frames per second. It wasn't until DLSS 3 came along that they were able to get over 60 frames per second. With DLSS, Microsoft Flight Simulator basically runs at about maybe 60, 65 frames per second. I've seen several VR videos where people ran VR benchmarks on Microsoft Flight Simulator with 3090s, with DLSS 3, with VR, and they were running about 47 frames per second. There is no way a game like Microsoft Flight Simulator would run on the PS5 in VR. It would look like total dog shit. They would have to turn those graphics down so fucking low that everything would be blurry. And then you factor in the 120 hertz free projection that's going to make everything have a ghost trail and look even blurry. It would look awful. So there's just some games, in my opinion, that just will not come to PSVR 2 because if a computer can't run those games very well, then it's a certainty that the PS5 wouldn't be able to run those games at all. So So Dan Sock, I think PL6 will have proper power for VR in my opinion. So about 4 years or so. Um, You know, Dan Socks, I've been doing VR since 2016. I bought PSVR when it came out in 2016. The Quest Pro has finally brought me to the clarity that I've wanted. For years, because of the Fresnel lenses that these headsets have had, everything within the sweet spot is clear. Outside of it is blurry. Racing games in VR, everything up close is clear. Everything in the background is blurry. The Quest Pro, along with my 4090, has finally given me something that I've been wanting for years, and that's to see everything clearly. And even on ACC, in order to get a clear picture and get a smooth frame rate, I still have to tinker with the settings. I still have to turn the shadows down from high to medium. I still have to turn the shadow distance down. I have to turn the pixel density down. There's a lot of settings that I have to tweak with in order to get this thing to look clear, in order to run clear. So it took me building a $4,000 PC and putting a $1,000 headset on that PC in order to get this game to look clear. There's no way they would be able to do it on PS5 in my opinion. At least ACC. I'm not saying all racing games, but I'm almost certain ACC is the one game that I believe unequivocally would not look good on PSVR 2. I don't think it would look good. I don't think it would run good. So from the old PC VR days, from the Oculus Rift days, we took those good looking VR games for granted. There's some beautiful VR games back then. Lone Echo, Half-Life Alyx. In my opinion, two of the most beautiful games in VR. Now, we did appreciate Half-Life Alyx. But I think that Alakazam, what's up? But I think the other games, I think we took advantage of them. I think we took them for granted. And when the Quest came along, it kept VR alive in terms of moving us closer to the mainstream. But in terms of the content that we were getting, it set us back. Because now people are making these Roblox type games for the Quest. And then when they port it over to PC, they're not giving it that PC love, you know. So you still playing Quest looking games on PC. And that's why I was excited for PSVR 2. Not because of the headset. It's because PSVR 2 was going to give developers motivation to bring premium games back, because it would give them another revenue stream. You know, they can make a game for PC and then make whatever adjustments they need to make to port it over to PSVR or vice versa. But as I said before, I think Sony's going to manipulate a little bit of the market. I think take lo-fi for instance. I think everybody who knows VR sees what lo-fi looks like. It's cyberpunk in VR. It looks like that when that game comes out, it looked like that game could be the most beautiful game that we've ever seen in VR. At first, the game had its own trailers. Now the game seems to be marketed by PSVR 2, meaning that I think Sony might have stepped in and they may have paid for timed exclusivity. Or they may have paid the developer to dumb down the PC version and make the PSVR 2 version the best looking version, which that raises a lot of concerns with me. So yeah, I mean, we got deeper into that subject that I wanted to get into that I wanted to, but remember all this stuff that I'm saying, because when I come back and give you guys my evaluation of PSVR 2, keep all this stuff in mind, what we're talking about right here, because that is a big factor of what kind of recommendations that I will give. I may eventually get PSVR, but I'm hooked on Quest Pro. Hey, hold on. Yeah, the pancake lenses of this headset is a game changer. Um, so I guess I probably already said enough, but um, I barely I barely touch my PSVR 2. I mean, I'm at a point where I'm playing it now just so it's not sitting around collecting dust. The edge-to-edge clarity of those pancake lenses of the Quest Pro is a game changer. Tantrum, PSVR 2's biggest feature is that it now has thumbsticks and is not limited to outside. I feel this is also, I mean, saying this is also giving you guys an early prelude to my evaluation of PlayStation VR 2. PSVR 2 is in the state that I thought it would be in right now. I knew that when the headset launched, the majority of the games that you would see on PSVR 2 are games that we've already had on PC. And in my opinion, these are games that should have been on the original PSVR, but I think because of tracking and the move sticks, the move controllers not having thumbsticks, I think it made a port over to PSVR 1 more trouble than it was worth for devs. The only thing that PSVR 2 has done is they caught up to industry standards by adding thumbsticks to the controllers. In my opinion, other than the head haptics, I don't think PSVR 2 is doing anything special. I think they gave the headset enough power and enough functionality that the majority of the games that's on PC should be able to come to PSVR 2. My good friend Gamertag, he was saying that he said he did a Q&A or Ask Me Anything a couple of weeks ago. He said he doesn't think Half-Life Alyx is coming to PSVR 2. He thinks the PS5 is capable of running it, which I would agree with him, but only so much. I think the PS5 can run it, but I think it would be seriously compromised because at the time that Half-Life Alyx came out, I had a 2070, and it was recommended that you run it on a 2080 Ti, which at the time was the most powerful GPU out there. And whenever I booted up Half-Life Alyx, I would always get this message saying that my RAM memory or my storage memory is low. So basically, I had to turn the graphics down to medium. With my 4090, I can max that shit out. All that being said, I think the PS5 has the graphical power of a 2070. Therefore, if Half-Life Alyx were to come to PSVR 2, I think the game would be downgraded. I think there would be some assets stripped out of the game. Some lighting, some shadows that might not be there. I think it will undoubtedly use the 120 hertz reprojection. Sony knows that that is a problem. And Sony knows that the 120 hertz reprojection is off-putting for some people because the developer of Hubris, when they were marketing the game, they mentioned that the game had 120 hertz reprojection. But they tried to put a band-aid on it by saying yes, it does have reprojection, but it is not very noticeable. And then they said that Sony is addressing the reprojection issue. They know that that shit is off-putting for some people. They know that that shit is a deal breaker for somebody. It's almost getting to the point where it's turned into a deal breaker for me. Because when I was playing GT7 yesterday, that reprojection was horrible. The shit was so fucking blurry that I thought my eyes were fucking up on me. I had to pull over. I pulled over a couple of times, had to take my glasses off, clean them and shit like that. Everything was sharp while the car was sitting still. I mean, it was clear. I'm not going to say sharp. PSVR 2 is not sharp. It is clear, but it's not sharp. Not sharp like this Quest Pro. Once I started moving again, everything turned blurry again. Gory, what's up? I can play Half-Life Alyx on my GTX 1080. I can run it at very high graphics. Doesn't seem to give my system any problems. You know, a lot of PCs are different. I mean, when I had the 2070, I could run it at high, but it would be a little bit janky. I had to turn it down to medium in order to get it to run smooth. So again, you're surviving good. That was the reason I sold VR2 second day of release and pursued the 4090. My man, glory, with the 4090 in the Quest Pro. You are the man. The Quest Pro and a 4090 is an unbeatable combination. And then some of these games support the OpenXR toolkit, which will allow you to upscale the resolution, turn on the turbo mode that gives you a boost. And in the case of ACC, through the OpenXR toolkit, it supports eye tracking FOV. And that has been huge for freeing up resources on my computer. So he said I have to look at it again. It seems I had it on high or very high. I don't doubt that. Another game that I think it could come to PSVR 2. Originally, I thought it would. But now that I think that I'm seeing the limitations of the PSVR 2 starting to rise above the surface, I thought Medal of Honor Above and Beyond will come to PSVR 2 because the game got off to a bad start. I think two things hurt that game. I think three things hurt that game. One might have been the price tag. It was a $60 game. The other is the file size. The game was 175 gigs. The other thing was they recommended that you download the game on an SSD because if it's not on an SSD, it would take forever to load. And they recommended that you have a 2080 Ti, which again, at that time, the 2080 Ti was the most powerful GPU out there. The 120 hertz reprojection, they were not calling it reprojection. They were calling it like, I don't know, I think they were calling it frame generation or some kind of technique that was equivalent to the AMD FSR, which is the equivalent of the NVIDIA DLSS. You know, they made it sound like that and was talking about how it was going to free up resources. It could free up as much as 60% of the resources of the PS5. No. In my opinion, the 120 hertz reprojection, or the AMD FSR as they wanted to call it, in my opinion, it does not free up resources of the PS5. What it does is keep these games from looking like they're running like shit. Without the 120 hertz reprojection, some of these games would run like absolute dog shit. Look how much patchwork they had to do to Horizon Call of the Mountain when that game first came out. It's a beautiful game, but it would look like blurry dog shit when it first came out. Tantrum, 4090 and the Quest Pro doesn't cost $1,000 though. Much more if you got the cash. Yeah, my computer has a 4090 in it. Well, I got 3 computers, but my biggest computer has a 4090 in it. I've got over $4,000 into that computer. And then, I got this Quest Pro right here, which was $1,000. I've got a total of 6 headsets in here. 3 computers, 2 PS5s, an Xbox. So yeah, it's like Radio Shack in here. Says it's a lot of money, but man, you spend once and then just game for 3 to 4 years without sweat. Absolutely. Hell, this computer that I'm sitting at right now is still adequate. The computer that I'm sitting at right here doing the streaming, this computer has a 3080 Ti in it. That was my main computer. That was my main graphics card before I bought the 4090. Hey, thanks, Gory. Appreciate it. And then the computer in my bedroom, which is my streaming PC, has a 3070 Ti in it. And that still runs the majority, like the majority of VR games that's built from the ground up, it can still run those. And the other thing is, my computer in the bedroom, I still use the Rift S on that computer, and it allows me to pretty much play anything because the Rift S doesn't really tax the computer that much. Unlike maybe the Reverb G2, which I have one of those. I have a Reverb G2. With the Reverb G2, the picture is incredibly sharp, but it also has an equally incredibly small sweet spot. You look outside that sweet spot and it's blurry. And that's why the pancake lenses of the Pro is game changing, because the lenses, the picture, once you get that headset on correctly, there is no more sweet spot. The sweet spot disappears once you put the headset on correctly and get it to your liking. Now, like everywhere you look from edge to edge, the entire picture is clear. Gory Glory, how do you feel about the Open XR? I did try on ACC and it looked okay, but the foveated rendering looked weird to me as it was blurred where I don't look. Now, with the foveated rendering, there's presets. You can set it to quality, you can set it for performance, and then as far as the radius goes, you can set it to narrow, balanced, and wide. If you set it to wide, you barely even see anything. If you have the preset set to narrow, you're right. You see that same distortion outside of the radius, just like you do on GT7 because of the foveated rendering on GT7. Anywhere you look outside of, you see all that pixelation and distortion around the outside. You see the same thing on ACC with the Quest Pro, but once you start moving, all that distortion around the outside pretty much disappears, and it's like the entire screen is clear. So at the end of the day, GT7 is clear, but marred with blurry images with unfair penalty and bad drivers. Yeah. For this particular stream, I did want to focus on the horrible penalty system and the dirty drivers, but we ended up going off the tracks and started talking about PSVR. But yeah, that was pretty much the basis of this podcast. I noticed big GT streamers don't use VR. Their main complaint is they can't see chat and interact with the audience. For the most part, they would be right. Even Gamertag said it himself that you have to use speech chat. Now, PSVR 2 has its own speech chat. The problem with it is it does not say the name. Whereas whenever I would run my PS5 through my capture card, and then I would use the speech chat on PC. Anybody that makes a comment, the speech chat will read off their name first, and then it will say the comment. Like, for instance, it will say, Gory Glory 0209 said, nice setup, Clay. Whereas on the PSVR 2, on the PSVR 2 voice speech chat, it won't announce his name. It'll just say, nice setup, Clay. And then I'm like, oh, who said that? You know, then I have to ask people that, hey, before you make a comment, type in your name so I know who's making the comment and I can respond appropriately, because I feel weird when somebody makes a comment and I don't know who said it. And that's another thing that Sony has not delivered on. One of the things they advertised was on PSVR the ability to use the camera. We don't have that yet. And then the chat window inside the headset, I know they can do it because they had it on PSVR 1 and on PSVR 2. If someone sends you a personal message, if they DM you, you'll get a notification inside the headset, and you can hit the PlayStation button to open up that message and still view it from inside the headset. So I know they can put that chat window when streaming. I know they can put that chat window inside the headset. Why they haven't done it, I don't know. Why? Now the camera, I think one of the reasons why we haven't been able to use the camera is because of clarity. Not clarity, but parity. You guys know how I told you that I do believe that GT7 is in VR, even with all the compromises that they've made, is still a very demanding game on PSVR 2. And I think one of the reasons why it's so demanding is because of the NPCs. You look out in the crowd and you see the fans, they're still moving around. They're waving, they're walking around. Whereas on like ACC and Automobilista 2, the fans pretty much look like props. They look like cutouts. There's not any live people moving around in there. It's just all cutouts. And I believe that frees up a lot of resources to focus on the core aspect of the game, the inside of the car, the tracks and stuff like that. Because at 200 miles an hour down the streets, who's going to be trying to look at people in the stands to see what they're doing? So I think that's something that they could have done to Gran Turismo 7 with the crowd. I think they could have just put, steel props, stationary props in the stands. And I think that would have freed up resources to put better assets or work towards a better performance for GT7. But yeah, so that was a long answer to your question, to your comment, Great Tantrum. So yeah, it's because the speech chat is not going to tell you when somebody super chats you, and big YouTubers, they have to respond to those super chats if they want to keep that money coming in. So let me go, Lincoln. Have a good day. Thanks for popping in, Tantrum. Appreciate it. Gory Glory. The integration could have been better with what Sony can do, but they just release it like a beta. I can agree with that. So, holy smokes, I've been on an hour, 20 minutes. I was supposed to get out of here about a half hour ago. But hey, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys chiming in because it kept the conversation going because I think I give better podcasts when I get crowd participation, when people ask questions and give their comments, and I can, respond to those comments or give my honest opinion on any questions that are asked of me. So I definitely appreciate all of you chiming in with your comments. I really, really appreciate it. It kept the conversation going. and it made this podcast enjoyable. So, with that, I am going to get ready to boogie on out of here. There is a couple of videos that I need to catch up on, and then I think I'm probably going to have to jump on ACC or jump on F123 and get caught up on some practice. As I think this week, I got to get in touch with him and find out what day we're going to do it. But our co-op career, am I gaming tonight? I don't know. Probably not, because I need to get some practice in. I was about to say that I got to get in touch with him so we can figure out what day we're going to get together and resume our co-op career on F123, because I think this week we are at Monaco, which is a race where qualifying is everything. Monaco is a track where there's pretty much no places where you can overtake. So your qualifying position is paramount. So I need the practice on Monaco so I can try to get that pole. Because if you have a bad qualifying session and I end up qualifying 14th or something like that, holy smokes! Glory with the oh shit, is that a 50? It's like 50. Oh shit. I don't know if HK is a form of money, but thank you so much. Keep streaming, my man. I appreciate it. I love your channel. Waiting for the next race. It's 9:15 here, and you know what? You know what? All right, I'll do something. I'll do something after this podcast. Even if I jump into an open lobby or something like that. I just don't I don't know whether to do ACC or do F123. Unfortunately, I can't do GT7 the way I'm feeling right now, because the only thing that's going to happen is if I go into a race and I get knocked off the track, I'll probably go into a wild fit. Oh, Hong Kong dollars. Okay. Oh, shit. I appreciate it. You in Hong Kong? Holy shit. I really, really appreciate that. Damn, what time is it in Hong Kong? Here, let me Google it and see what time it is in Hong Kong. It is, holy shit. You guys are 12 hours ahead of us. It is currently 9:17 a.m. in Hong Kong. It is currently 9:17 p.m. on the Eastern time in America. Around $10 US. Okay, yeah, definitely appreciate it. Yeah, Ham is back. He's back from vacation. I talked to him. I talked to him a few days ago. In fact, oh, you just based there? Okay. So Ham. Okay, so with the OpenXR toolkit, Ham is the one who put up the instructional video of how to set up the OpenXR toolkit. So I followed that video and I set up the OpenXR toolkit, and I got the Quest Pro, and the OpenXR toolkit was not working for some of these games. And then Ham contacted me and said, "You're probably using an older version. Here's a link to the newest version," and I did that. And then the OpenXR toolkit worked. In fact, You know what? In fact, Gory, I'll go ahead and stream because I need to check something. So I'll go ahead and do a stream right after I get done with this podcast. Because what I'm about to say leads up to that. So Ham sent me a link and said this is the updated version of the OpenXR toolkit. So I updated it, and it took a while for me to figure everything out, but I got it working, got the eye tracking FOV working and all that kind of stuff. In addition to that, I'm going to show you guys something real quick before we get out of here. Let me pull up the task manager. I've showed you guys this before. Okay, so let me put it on display. Let me close this and put it on display again. Okay, so this is the task manager. If you look right there where it says power usage is high, that is for OBS. You look at these numbers across the top. And right here at GPU, 44% of my GPU is being used. If you look right here, this is OBS. 32% of my GPU is being used. Part of that has to do with the format. Now, when NVIDIA introduced the 4000 cards, they talked about this AV1 encoder, which is supposed to give you the same, if not better performance, but taxes your PC even less. So I switched over, I updated OBS, and I changed the format to this AV1 encoder. And I opened up OBS, and it was only taking up like 3% of my GPU. So that's my reason to go ahead and do another stream after I get done with this podcast, is so I can test that OB1 and that AV1 encoder on my computer in there. Because if it only taxes my computer by 3%, then that means I can do everything from one computer. Because right now I do everything from two computers. I have, my 4090 gaming computer, and I have all three of my computers connected. So one computer I'm gaming on, and another computer is handling all the streaming duties. With this new AV1 encoder, I might be able to do everything on one computer. But this only works with 4,000 cards. All right. Yeah, I followed that video, but we got 4090 and so much power with AMS2. I use Oculus mode. It's pretty much a beast, but yeah, to avoid streaming, OpenXR is best. Now, so yeah, Automobilist 2 is so well optimized that you don't necessarily need the OpenXR toolkit if you don't want to use it. ACC, on the other hand, because it's not that well optimized, you have to take every shortcut that you can think of to get the most out of it. So, that being said, the eye tracking FOV of the OpenXR toolkit, along with the AV1 encoder for OBS, drastically reducing how much my computer's taxed. I just want to jump on ACC, and I'll just, jump on there and do one or two races, and I want to see the playback and see how much it taxed the computer. I want to see if the playback is janky, because when I did that stream a few days ago, testing the OpenXR toolkit, the beginning of the stream was really janky because I had so many windows open. Had the Oculus app open, had the Oculus Mirror open, had ACC open, had the SimHub adapter open, had the speech chat open, I think I had about I think I had about 6 windows open. So the game was running good, but everything else suffered. So once I got done showing you guys the OpenXR toolkit, and I closed the Oculus mirror because, in a sense, the game was running 3 times. It was running through the companion app. It was also running through the Oculus mirror, and it was also running in the headset. If I would have went into OBS and opened up the game itself as a source, it would have been running 4 times. That's going to tax the shit out of any PC. So, yeah, I want to get in there and test it, test the AV1 encoder, and see how much resources it frees up. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hang this up here in a few minutes, and then I'm going to hop right on over and get everything set up over there. One Speed, what's up? How you doing? And I will jump on ACC, and I will do a couple of races over there. You guys can join me over there and let me know what you see. Let me know if you guys see a janky stream and all that stuff too. So with that, so 9:30. So yeah, let's do this. Let's go ahead and sign off. I will come back in about 15 or 20 minutes on ACC, and we'll see how the performance looks over there. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in a few minutes. So I'll just give you the, you know what? I'm not even going to quite give you guys the Wakanda send off. I'll just say we'll see you guys in a few minutes. All right? Catch you in a few.